Good morning. This is the Friday Fireside, and we are here with Adriana Waterston, Senior VP of Strategy and Insights for Green Horizons Insights, which is a part of the Horowitz Group. Is that right, Adriana? How are you today?
That is correct. I'm doing fantastic today, Rick. Thank you for having me.
Tell us how Green Horizons got started. We want to kind of learn how you got into this sort of fringe research business,
Yeah.
a very traditional background. And then we're going to talk about the research. But tell us how Green Horizons got started.
Well, actually, it's funny that you characterize it like that because actually, you know, the history of Horowitz Research is that we started as Howard, of course, launched the company back in the early 80s when cable was what the cannabis industry is now. I mean, it was a new frontier. These were, you know, this was a time, in cable when we were basically asking ourselves the question, you know, who would pay for television when television was free? And Howard started, and Horowitz Research started, really helping the networks and the small cable operators we didn't have MSOs back then. It was all the local cable guys running cable into new markets and emerging markets and trying to find audiences and subscribers and customers and trying to understand, you know, who is going to be our consumer of this multi-channel product that we all of a sudden have now envisioned. And so at the time, you know, cable was really a whatever niche or cutting edge, business, and also faced a lot of the same hurdles that cannabis is facing now beyond, you know, the marketing questions that I just posed about who the customer is and what they would buy and what they would want and how to package it and how to price it and how to promote it and how to brand it. There were also similar, regulatory issues with trying to make, you know, deals with at the local government level, dealing with the FCC and all these, lot of parallels.
Interesting. Yeah, that's right. Getting franchises tended to make for a very fragmented market, and now we have in the cannabis arena a very fragmented market. I think even in states where it's legal, it's not necessarily legal in all parts of that state. Is that right?
And there are different, there's obviously the medical and the recreational, and and every state has different sort of standards for what is acceptable, what you can sell, how much you can sell, the concentrations and all of these other kinds of things. So it's complex, and so very, very similar parallels to where cable was back when Horowitz Research started. And the success of Horowitz Research over the past, decades since the 80s that we've been in business, 4 decades, is that we were born out of that industry, and at the beginnings of that industry, we grew up in that industry, followed that industry very closely, and understood, all of the developments from the ground up, and that's why our customers and our clients in the cable industry trust us and know that we do good work. And our decision to launch Green Horizons really came out of that same desire to get in an industry where there's relatively little information, certainly very little consumer information, about all of the issues that we just described, and really know it from the ground up and from the beginning, and establish ourselves as thought leaders and real experts in the field. And so that was what motivated the launch of Green Horizons. I will also say that there are a lot of synergies between the Green Horizons effort that we're doing and sort of our own sensibilities and ways that we look at the world. So we launched it. And by the way, the goal with Green Horizons is to focus, of course, on cannabis now, but it really is about doing research to support, the movement towards, more holistic, and more sustainable living on multiple levels, not just with regard to cannabis, but everything from green energy and sustainable, farming and all the other things that, we really believe in, with cannabis being sort of the beginning and core of it.
Well, I will tell you that, as you know, I sent out a couple of sort of promotional bits on LinkedIn and Twitter and other places over the last couple of days, grabbing graphics, by the way, from your study. I'm sure you. And lo and behold, I have a whole lot more new friends on LinkedIn, and Twitter, and even on Facebook. Yeah. So there would appear to be a hunger for your findings. So give us some really, really interesting things that you've learned on that our viewers would find surprising.
Right. I mean, well, first of all, let's just start with sort of dispelling the myths about who are cannabis users.
Okay. Wait, I want to say one thing. I'm going to do this, and right here, somewhere below where this is showing, you'll find a link to a white paper on this research study, right? Yeah. Okay. All right. Go on.
Excellent. So the first thing is, let's dispel some myths. I mean, especially those of us who may not be in the market for cannabis, or not users ourselves, or haven't interacted with people who are users, may still think that this is about a bunch of teenage ne'er-do-wells or college age dead show attending hippies with long hair and flowy skirts, or we might think of them, cannabis users, as sort of on the illegal fringe and questionable characters and all that. Just dispel that myth right now in your mind, because that is not who the cannabis user is. First of all, yes, cannabis users do skew young, but many cannabis users are, actually family households. The income level of cannabis users is on par with non-cannabis users. These are folks that are actually very health conscious, that are very into social and environmental causes, that tend to be wanting to be on the leading edge of even trends in technology and other kinds of trends in the consumer marketplace. So this segment is a very desirable segment. Okay, so that's the number one thing to realize. The number two thing to realize is that it's actually a very sort of segmented marketplace, because we've got the medicinal users versus the recreational users. Although actually about 40% of cannabis users are both. They are both medicinal users and recreational users. But there are sort of differences between these two segments with, for example, people that are medicinal only tend to be more conservative, so more Republican leaning and things like that, compared to the people that are recreational only, who are more, as you might suspect, more liberal and things like that. But what that basically means is that we also shouldn't imagine the cannabis users are only like Democrats or progressives. It is a product that really appeals to a wide swath of Americans. And do you know that 39% of American adults are cannabis users?
No.
That number, yeah, I thought it was a lot more niche, but our research showed that, about 82 million American adults that are cannabis users, current cannabis users to some degree, maybe not, they're not all weekly users. I think it was something like 28% are weekly users. But that's still a huge number.
That's a massive number. Now that is you said current cannabis users. That's not leftover hippies like me who would admit that yes, I inhaled, but this is right now current in your research.
Yeah.
Both. That's a combination of the medicinal and the recreational, right?
Correct. It's obviously a higher number. I mean, I think it's like almost 45%. Are regular users in states where it's legal, because obviously the access, the issues of access are addressed there. Whereas in illegal states, in states where cannabis remains illegal, I think it's more about like a quarter of adults that said that they were at least occasional users. We asked the question, we addressed in our survey the things you said about I tried it, but I didn't inhale, back when I was in college. Like, we asked the question in a specific way so that we would understand past user, people that were never users, past users, tried it but didn't stick with it, current users that are more sort of infrequent occasional social users, and then those who are more regular users.
Those
So,
are big numbers. Okay, so right now the distribution of legal cannabis is an odd patchwork of municipalities. I think in California, for example, it's legal in San Francisco, but it's not necessarily legal in Palo Alto. I don't know if I'm getting that right, but there are odd governmental bits there, right?
Right. And to be honest, I'm not even that well versed in the minutia of every single state and their legalities and all that, but you're absolutely right.
And it's shifting. And it's okay. So an interesting parallel back to part of the television business is sports betting.
Yeah, and which is another area that we're involved in, actually.
Okay,
but
so
that's on the Horowitz side.
Legal state by state, but while sports betting is legal, I believe in New Jersey.
It's 22 states plus Washington, D.C. right now have legalized sports betting.
But New Jersey has no television stations. So the television stations in New York and Philadelphia can be broadcasting games on which people in New Jersey can bet. But those television stations, certainly the broadcasters, will have difficulty targeting advertising to only the left side of the market if you're in New York, or the right side of the market if you're in Philadelphia. So coming back to cannabis now, I've always just had this sense that Budweiser is just perched right there with an ad campaign that literally says, "This bud's for you." Okay.
It should be.
Are you poking into that piece of it yet, or is it not yet quite developed enough?
Well, I mean, we just launched the company not that many months ago. So we're we actually can you hear me? Because am I breaking up? Okay. We launched the company really in late fourth quarter of 2019. So unfortunately, we're kind of right now in the business development stage, but COVID hit. So it's been a little bit, those efforts are happening slowly to connect with all of these brands that are, if they aren't already, strategizing their entry into the cannabis business, then they should certainly be thinking about it. And you're right, many of them already are. And I actually, however you might feel about this one way or the other, do think that, the cannabis industry right now is faced with a lot of challenges. Of course, the regulatory landscape makes it very difficult to create national brands, to do, national promotions, to really do brand building in ways that companies are used to doing. So local activations are very important, and thinking about local partnerships and experiential activities, which I'll actually talk about in a little bit, are very important. But I agree that once it becomes a little easier to do business in the cannabis space, like it or not, the spirits industry, the CPG industry, and the tobacco industry are going to swoop down and really, be able to benefit from it. That's just the reality of what's going to happen in the long term. But I think that's not, we're not going to really see it until some of these regulatory issues are joined.
I get it. Okay, so now you talked about the experiential part. Well, what do you mean by that?
Well, one of the challenges I think that cannabis as an industry has is dispelling some of the myths and stereotypes that, we talked about at the top of this interview. And people that are not in the market right now for cannabis, the other 60% of folks that aren't regular consumers, may not necessarily know how sophisticated the product offering has become, how nuanced it is, and really how diversified it's become as far as the kinds of products that you can buy and their associated benefits, right? So people might think of cannabis as simply like the bag of weed that you used to buy that had no brand, that if you bought an eighth this week, it might make you feel this way, and 2 weeks later you've got a completely different product. That's not what the market is like now. If you go to a dispensary, obviously, that there's different strains, and there's the all of the different options that you can get within the flower that you buy, but also within all the different products that you can get. So, for example, edibles, tinctures, topicals. I have a friend who is a partner in a company that's offering cannabis infused wine. So we're talking about, I know, doesn't that sound great? It's called Saka, and she's fantastic. I can introduce you to her. Saka infused wine, but it's only available in California because that's where the company is based, and there she can sell, but she can't sell to, she can't ship it to me here in New York. So, but if you think about, a consumer that, might be thinking of it just as like the little baggies of weed, and all of a sudden, but this is the same person who attends wine tastings and likes to go to, wineries for tours and things like that. Once this person, that kind of consumer, is introduced to how sophisticated and diversified the cannabis industry has become, and quite frankly, the health benefits that cannabis offers that other things you might be consuming don't, I think that that the market will grow exponentially. And we already see that there's really a softening to the cannabis industry. So even among non-users, the majority of non-users are not consuming cannabis because they have something really big against it. 18% say that the reason they're not doing it is because it's illegal. They're just afraid of getting in trouble and having whatever, and they're living in a state where they can't get it. 67% though, the big reason is I'm just not that interested in it. But
is that okay? So is that not interested because there's a fear that getting stoned is out of control? I mean, don't we now have the ability, or don't the growers now have the ability to have milder strains and much more potent strains?
Yeah, absolutely. And also
on the light stuff, right, or something.
Right, but and also if you go and you shop cannabis products, they will tell you the concentration of THC that's in that product. Right. So actually, you can control your the dosage and the experience, and it's also very predictable. If you've bought sativa and it's a gummy that's 5% THC, and you buy that particular product all the time, and you're going to know exactly what it's going to do to you.
You try one and it's this much, and you try two and it's really nice, and you try three and it's too much, so you go back to two. I get it. Yeah.
Most people would want to stick to one, actually, but I think
it also depends on the size.
It all depends, and the person, right?
Big gummy, little gummy, right?
Right. But it's in many ways, it's like it's like knowing what you're going to get if you're drinking, wine that's 14.5%, alcohol versus a bottle, 100 whatever, my Donku 151. I mean, you're going to get a different experience, but it's all labeled and it's all clear to the consumer. So. A lot of those concerns about, how do I control the effects it's going to have are mitigated by the legalization and commercialization of the product.
I think the commercialization is interesting because if, in fact, and I'm going to make sure and tag Anheuser-Busch on this posting so we get somebody there to look at it. If they do this Buds for You, we know that they're going to have pretty strict controls on the concentration of it. And even if we don't have, Food and Drug Administration type, Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture type, sign off on everything, once it gets commercial, there's a business interest in keeping the quality and the strength standard, predictable, can to can, bottle to bottle, piece to piece, right?
Exactly. And
it's not that far away, is it? 39% of Americans trying cannabis is a massive number.
Yeah, exactly.
How does that compare? Do you have a sense, how does that compare to the number of people who smoke cigarettes?
That's a good question. I actually should look that up. I have no idea. I mean, I have no idea do people still smoke cigarettes? I mean, I know it's a rhetorical question, but yeah, I'd have to look and see. I think cigarette smoking is still
the
larger.
commercial organizations who have the manufacturing capability, certainly the marketing capability, and scads of consumer data. Those guys are right there. Interesting. Listen, we are about out of time, but I do want to tell our readers that I'll be posting, when I put this up, I'll be posting the Alice B. Toklas cannabis brownie recipe. And oddly enough, as we talked before, they're not brownies, they're more like fruit bars.
Right.
And certainly, if people use this recipe to make Christmas fruitcakes, Christmas fruitcakes would be just a whole lot more popular than they are right now.
Yeah.
All right. Adriana,
I'll have to try that.
Waterston, thank you for your time. It's been fascinating.
Absolutely.
I think everybody's going to want to read the white paper, and I hope you generate a ton of business from this. Thank you.
Well, and thank you for having me, and it's always a pleasure participating. Say hi to Tracy for me, and have a great day.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
All right, take care.